Hi, everyone. Welcome to Azure User Group Sweden. Happy weekend to everyone. Hi, Håkan.
Hello, Duna. Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for asking. How about you?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yes, it's great. And today we will be having an interesting session. So, we will have a session about the 10 things you need to do to build a rock solid Azure tenant. And this is with Mustafa Toroman, who's joining us today live at Azure User Group Sweden. And before we start and introduce our speaker today, I would like to introduce ourselves first. I would like to introduce Håkan Silvernagel, who is my co-leader at Azure User Group Sweden. He is an AI MVP, Microsoft AI MVP. He is the manager for big data and AI at Miles. And he is also a strong community leader everywhere, especially for leading the AI school AI 42, .NET Norwegian user group, and also Oslo AI and a lot of other community that he does. So yes, that's Håkan.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm also very proud and happy to be able to introduce Jonah. So Jonah Anderson is the founder of our user group, and she's also a Microsoft Azure MVP and a certified trainer. And in addition to that, she is a mentor, a public speaker, a blogger, and also a podcast host. And she works as a cloud and DevOps engineer. And in addition, she is also a book author for O'Reilly.
Yes, that's very better better interaction, Håkan. Thank you so much. I miss some of yours. We have a lot of titles, but that's what we do. Who loves community and sharing knowledge for everyone. Yeah, so that's us, and it's good that you got to know us, especially those that are joining us for the first time. And before we kickstart our great session coming, would like to remind everyone about our code of conduct. So Azure User Group Sweden community is expecting everyone to be nice and friendly, uh, listen and be respectful to others, even in the live chat or even after session Zoom meetings we have. Seek to understand, not criticize. Be curious and ask questions and open your ideas and be inclusive and respectful in your comments during our sessions. And if you have questions about our code of conduct or you have concerns, feel free to reach out to me and Håkan directly. Okay. And learner, go ahead, Håkan. You can share about
Yes.
this.
Yeah, so we also are welcome you to claim your learner badge here. So if you want to have your learner badger, you can go to the Bitly link, Azure Sweden / Azure Security, and then you will get a very nice learner badge from us.
Yes, and also the learning path as
Yes.
well, the
Mm.
QR code. Yes, that's great. And we will also be having the standard 15-20 minute after session virtual fika to those that who wants to join us casually with our guest speaker today and ask about Azure security related questions that you're wondering about or about the session. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
So then I think it's time to introduce our guest here for today, which
Yes.
is Mustafa. Uh, Hello, Mustafa. Hi, welcome.
Hello everyone.
Yes. Hi, Mustafa. Welcome to our community virtually
Uh,
in
Thank
Sweden.
you. Love
Yes.
to be here with you.
uh,
Yes.
let
Thank
me
you.
just have a more formal introduction here. So Mustafa Thurman is a solution architect who is focused on cloud native applications and also how you can migrate existing systems to the cloud. And he's very interested in DevOps processes and also cybersecurity, and also an infrastructure as code enthusiast and DevOps Institute ambassador. And he speaks at many different international conferences about cloud technologies. And he's also been awarded some prizes here, and the Microsoft Azure MVP and the C Sharp Corner MVP. And in addition to that, he's also authored several books both about Microsoft Azure and cloud computing. So we're
Mhm.
very happy to have you here.
Yes, welcome. And that book is actually one of the security books that I have been reading as well, Mastering Azure Security, that Mustafa wrote with Tom. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Token.
So do you want to say something about the session here today, Mustafa? What will you be talking about?
Yeah, so 10 things you need to do to build a rock solid Azure tenant. What I try to do here is provide 10 basic tips that any of us can do tomorrow. Like once we go back to work, we should be looking into these and implementing them immediately. Obviously, security is a big topic, and cloud security I could probably talk about it for days. There's a book proving I know a
Yeah.
lot about that stuff, and I've been doing extensive trainings. And if we go deep dive, there are a million things we need to pay attention to. But with these 10 things, I'm trying to focus on the most important things and things that everyone should be doing right now from the very start.
Yes, I like that. Yeah, I'm actually interested to listen to this as well. So, yes, so yeah, you're ready to rock the stage to give a rock solid Azure tenant, Mustafa. So,
Okay.
yeah, let me just show your presentation. And yes, we'll remove ourselves. So, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Okay, so as we said, 10 things you need to do to build a rock solid Azure tenant. There was already said a lot about me, so no reason to lose any more time about it. Only I work as a principal architect with the Devo team. Here is my Twitter handle. If anyone wants to reach out, if I can give you any assistance, feel free to do so. I always try to answer the messages. If I don't do it immediately, I'm probably very busy, but it will come eventually. Let's start with a little introduction to cloud security in general. So there are little the security in the cloud is a little bit different than what we had previously, or than what we did in on-prem data centers. And looking at the construction of the Azure data center, it can be separated into few different layers. So the physical layer, where we are actually talking about the physical access to the data center, to the hardware where it's all running itself. It's kind of funny, like when we discuss the cloud, it's always like it's abstracting the hardware from our premise, from our locations, but there is still hardware in the background, right? So as they say, the cloud is just someone else's computer. So there is this physical aspect, and cloud provider is always protecting it in a possible way. Then we have infrastructure layer, where we have again many different things, like it's secured by design, operation security controls, compliance certification, industry leading standards, penetration testing done all the time, DDoS protection, forensics. It's all in place. Then we go to the network layer, where we have isolation between customer environments, access control lists, force tunneling, security appliances, and other stuff. And finally, we get to virtual machine and application layer, where we have anti-malware, key vault, role-based access controls, login auditing. And from very beginning, when we discussed cloud security, we had a lot of discussions about um, how secure it is. And then there was like always this, especially from the cloud provider, it always came as a, yeah, it's very secure. You should always look at it like that's very secure in your local data center. And to some extent, I do agree, but not by default. That's what we need to keep in mind. So the part that Microsoft as a cloud provider does in their Azure data centers, it's probably the part of the security they are responsible is probably more secure than most of the organization, like 99.9% of organization will ever reach. Uh, we can maybe exclude like military or some government agencies and stuff that are putting that security, especially the physical security and other stuff, kind of ahead of everyone else. But for most organizations, what cloud providers are doing, it's simply unreachable, because cloud provider is always doing it at certain scale, and we cannot compete with that. But putting stuff in the cloud doesn't make it secure by default. We need to understand that there is this shared responsibility model in the cloud, and depending on which type of services are we using, software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, what type of service we are using, it depends how much responsibility falls on us, right? So as I said, the part that Microsoft as a cloud provider is doing is going to be a top-notch industry standards, best possible security that we can provide in the local data center. But there are certain elements that we need to do by ourselves, right? So things like data governance and rights management, that's always going to be on our side as a customer. We need to control that plane, that no matter if it's software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, we are only going to control that. Then we have different things, like when we discuss identity and directory infrastructure, then it's kind of becoming a little bit vaguer who controls what, like responsibility is a little bit shared. Then we have the application layer, which is again split. For software as a service application is going to be on the cloud provider, on the Microsoft. So if you're using Microsoft 365, that's on Microsoft. With the platform as a service, it's completely is split. Like parts of it are on our side, part of it on Microsoft. And finally, when we discuss infrastructure as a service, that completely falls on us, and it really complies only also with that infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service model, on how much control we get over the environment. So this is kind of like in the opposite direction. The more control we have, the more responsibilities on our side. So more security we need to look into. Now, understanding that there is part of the security that is our responsibility, let's look at these top 10 things that we need to look at straight away, things that should be implemented on our side from the very beginning as soon as we are starting to use cloud. So, first one is obviously MFA. I cannot emphasize enough how much important it is to enable multi-factor authentication for your cloud accounts. When we compare this part to on-prem and how we handle accounts in the on-prem environment, it was kind of like on-prem in general had this perimeter defense. So accounts were usable, and even if credentials are leaked and someone has gained your username and password in on-prem environment, they still needed physical access to the location, right? They needed to access your network to actually use that account and do any kind of damage. With the cloud, it's completely different. With the cloud, if your credentials are leaked, they can be used from anywhere in the world, because everything is online, it's reachable over internet. And now we are no longer protected by this physical location, because everything is accessible from any point in the world. So multi-factor authentication as an additional layer is very important. I definitely recommend doing this. It should be a default, and not just for Microsoft Azure. Any type of online account that you have, you should have multi-factor authentication enabled on it. Easiest way to do it is definitely with Authenticator app, which is very simple to use, easy to use, and after all, our mobile phones are with us at all times. Like we don't. There are different ways of doing this. They could be physical tokens and other stuff, but we don't leave anywhere without our mobile phones, right? They are always with us. When we sleep, they are right next to us, next to our bed. When we go outside, we could forget everything else, but we are not going to forget our mobile phones. So they are very convenient and easy way to do this. There are obviously other methods, but even with mobile phones, we can use call option or receive a SMS code. Uh, However, I definitely recommend using Authenticator app, because when discussing that part, we definitely need to consider security aspects, and Microsoft Authenticator app is definitely more secure than having option of a phone call or SMS message, because SIM cards can be duped, they can be redirected, they can be duplicated, and it can prove to be a unsecure way of communicating. However, using app is directly on your device, it cannot be manipulated, and it's most way secure way of using through the mobile phones. And speaking of multi-factor authentication, we cannot definitely ignore the aspects of today's password-led push and uh, things like FIDO2 keys that can help us even further secure our accounts. So it's definitely also something to look at and something to use. Second part is used role-based access controls. This one, so this point and the next one are very much going into um, zero trust approach that we are going with the cloud. So zero trust approach is we want to verify everything, and we don't want to overextend our privileges, right? It also comes with a traditionally, when we look into two principles, it is like principle of least privilege and just-in-time access. So no one should have more privileges than they are required to do their work, and no one should have access when they don't need it, right? So role-based access controls comes with this least privilege option. With the role-based access control, we have different types of roles that we can assign on different access layers in Azure, so we can actually perform our role, right? So very often, and especially in on-prem environments, we kind of tend to overdo it with the permissions. We don't recommend doing that in the cloud, especially again, zero trust, different approach than what we did in the on-prem environment. We need to focus more on security aspects with exposing everything over the internet, having access over internet, which makes it a little bit more vulnerable. So anyone should have this least privilege approach, where we are having enough to do our work, whatever our job is. It should be enough, but we don't get over the point. So assigning everyone with the owner permissions, not cool. We should not do it. We should find appropriate role on which we actually need to do our job, and assign it on appropriate level. They can be assigned on the management group level, on the subscription group, on the subscription level, resource group, or individual resources. So if I'm, for example, database administrator in my company, and I'm taking care of the databases, do I need management group level as an owner for everything? I don't think so. So assigning me with the with the role of the database administrator and someone who can do something with the data and perform different operations related to my role, that's much more appropriate. So there are hundreds of roles that are built in, and we are also able to build our own individual roles if we want to customize it even further. Also, what we need to remember is that we should more try to do group level access than individual accounts. So it is recommended not to assign these roles directly to accounts, but actually create groups that are doing that are shared, that have a shared access level, and then assign these role-based access controls on the group level and assign individual accounts to those groups, which makes it much easier to maintain in the future, trust me. Okay, second one is privileged access management. I already mentioned that it's the previous one and this one are aligned with that, and this one is taking of this just-in-time access. So basically, if I have account that has a privileged access, so some kind of like privileged role, I'm a global admin or owner of certain resources or whatever, is it a good idea to have that opened, like available to me by default? So the scenario here is like still it's accessible over internet. So my cloud environment, I can open Azure portal, log in, and I can see the resources I have access to, right? So even we are taking certain precautions, like there's already multi-factor authentication, for example, but there is still a chance that my account is exposed for whatever reason. There still is a chance it's exposed, that someone gained access to my account and is trying to do something. So the idea behind the privileged access management is that we don't get our privileged roles by default. We actually need to activate them. So basically, even when the bad actor is gaining access to my account and they are trying to do something bad in my environment, they cannot do it by default. So when they log in with my account, when it's compromised, that account will be simple user account. It cannot do any damage. So we are all using things like privileged identity management, privileged access management to actually have those roles activated for a certain period of time, and then we can perform our job. So, as I said, by default, I'm a regular user. If I actually need to do something, I can go to Pro's identity management portal, activate my role, whatever it is. It can be an owner, global admin, security admin, whatever it is. And then when I'm required to do work with this particular role, I activate it for a period of time. And once the period is expired, I either need to extend it or it's expired and done. And we can also associate appropriate approvals with these roles to even further increase the security. For example, if we have security team, right? And everyone on the security team are required to activate their role, and they also need an approval from someone else from the security team. So if for example, my account is compromised, and then someone tries to gain access to it, and they know that we are using privileged identity management, and they go into the portal and try to activate a role. But then my colleague, who knows that I'm on a vacation right now, is kind of thinking, yeah, something's wrong here. Like Mustafa is not in the office this week, and he should not be activating security administrator role right now, and decline that activation is completed. So there are many methods and definitely a way to improve security of our environments. Next one is secure endpoints. So with the public cloud and especially with the platform as a service model, most of the services by default are accessible over the internet, right? So whatever it is, like for web applications, that's probably not the best example, because for most of the time you want the web applications to be accessible over the internet, right? That's their entire point. Web, internet, applications, accessible, right? But let's look at the other services from the platform as a service, like databases, right? For example, like many different options from Azure SQL, Cosmos DB, whatever you want to use, then maybe storage accounts, all kind of backend services that should not be exposed directly to the internet. Like there should not be access. So there is an option that we should elevate and use private endpoints for these kind of things, because it will increase security of our services. We are not exposing our endpoints anymore unless it's really necessary. So any service, like I mentioned, databases, storage, service bus, whatever you're using inside your application, whatever doesn't need to have public access, it should be protected with the private endpoints, because we are removing a certain element of exposure, a certain element of risk in this example. Certainly, like when we look at those services, like they have option to limit the access, but there is always a way to let's say network access, like Azure SQL database. If I have an Azure SQL database, by default, it can be accessed. It needs to be accessed from somewhere, because if I just create an Azure SQL database and I need to create certain rules, IP rules that will allow access to the database, because without the access, it's just a database that no one can access, right? Not really cool. So let's say that I'm going to use my Azure SQL database together with app service, right? I'm going to have a web app with app service, and I want to give that web app access to that Azure SQL database. So I'm going to create this firewall rule saying, yeah, this is my IP address, this is my outbound IP address. I'm going to access it from here. All fine. I kind of limited the exposure. Most of the people cannot access it. So the database is protected. It requires connection to come from a certain IP address. But if you know anything about cybersecurity, then you can know that these things can be faked. I can fake that I'm coming from certain IP address. So that kind of protection might not be enough. So you want to take it a step further and put it on the private network, isolate your sensitive endpoints, put them on the private endpoints, put it inside the virtual network, and increase the security and allow only access from certain services that are also on your same network. Additionally, what we can do with the combination, use network security groups. So network security groups allow us to filter out the traffic and say what goes on this particular subnet or IP address. And also there's an option to use firewall to even increase the network filtering and create certain rules that will control the traffic entirely, both for inbound and outbound traffic, right? Now, one of my favorite services in Azure of all times, Web Application Firewall. I remember the first time I discovered this and how blown away I was with the service. So, Web Application Firewall is a service that comes along. It's basically a layer 7 load balancer that does additional filtering and checks and protection of your web applications. It can be used together with application gateway or Azure front door, and it can separate many different invalid requests, malicious requests coming to your website, filter them out, block them, and only provide access to valid requests. It's based on the OWASP top rules, so it's constantly updated. So rules are constantly being updated, and it's looking at the option like any type of cross-site scripting, SQL injection. It will be prevented from access. It will be blocked ahead, and it will not be allowed to reach your application. So on the web application layer, on the application gateway, these requests will be stopped. They will be halted, and then only valid requests will be forwarded. However, I want to remind you, like I'm also we mentioned in the beginning, I'm also DevOps Institute ambassador. I'm very into software development life cycle and how we need to build our application properly. So just because we have this tool that will protect us from certain vulnerabilities is not saying that we should ignore these vulnerabilities on the code side. So this is just additional layer, just additional protection for your web applications. But please try to improve quality of the code, fix any vulnerabilities that they are in your code, kind of try to do certain code scannings that will provide you with the vulnerability assessment, and try to fix those on the code level layer, rather than having only this, because no tool is perfect. Try to have it on every layer that is possible. So both application and infrastructure layer should work together to prevent any kind of malicious attack, and try to kind of minimize the exposure and the possible risk. Azure Key Vault, very cool service that you can do for a million different things. So Azure Key Vault can be used for secrets, password certificates, to store connection strings, used as an infrastructure as a code. Very cool service that can help us maintain all the sensitive information that are happening in Azure, right? So in on-prem environments, again, I'm constantly comparing, but that's what it is, right? When we discuss security, we need to compare these things. These kind of were approached again a little differently. Again, public cloud, exposed over internet, we need to take care of certain things. So Key Vault can help us in handling things like secrets, password certificates. So they are never exposed directly. They are encrypted inside the Key Vault, and we are providing services access to the Key Vault. Where they can grab these sensitive information, use them for our application, without ever exposing them in a plain text. So very important thing. Same things goes to the connection strings. Like in the configuration web configs, we are gonna store certain connection strings. That's not a best way to do it. Rather than that, we can store them securely in the Azure Key Vault. We provide access to our Key Vault to a service. It can go in, grab connection string, and never expose it in a plain text. And similar thing goes to infrastructure as a code. I am a big infrastructure as a code enthusiast. I love the aspect. I kind of used infrastructure as a code before it was a very cool thing to do. I tried to automate everything I could possibly do, and the tools that we have today are just so cool. We can do so many different things, but many of the services, many of the things, they are requiring certain sensitive information. For when we are deploying services with the infrastructure as a code, we are going to need to provide things like admin passwords or certificate for something, etc. Again, Key Vault to the rescue. We can store the sensitive information in the Key Vault and in our infrastructure. In our infrastructure as a code, we just reference where the Key Vault is. This way, these sensitive information are never exposed, because let's say if I'm running infrastructure as a code, if I need to provide an admin password, and if I just type it in the repository, not the best way to do it. We must agree on that, right? Not a cool way to do it, because anyone who gains access to the repositories automatically gains the password. Again, if you are looking at the best practices, very limited number of people should have access to production environments, right? For the test, for the dev test, even pre-prod, we are a little bit more open. People can access, can go in there, try to troubleshoot, etc. Access to the production should be very limited. So if I'm having my production code in the same repository and I kind of deploy it and the sensitive information are there, not a good idea. So rather than that, we use Key Vault, and with a Key Vault, we protect it with the infrastructure as a code as well. Next one, again, Key Vault. Encrypt your data. You want to encrypt your data everywhere, all the time. We want data to be encrypted. So we need to remember that with Azure, data is encrypted by default. So data is encrypted by default, and any kind of data service that you deploy, it's going to be encrypted by default. Let's again take, for example, Azure SQL database. By default, when you created Azure SQL database, today it's going to be protected with TD, transfer database encryption. That wasn't always the case. So back in the day, and that was some years ago, you didn't get the encryption by default. You needed actually to enable the encryption to have it. It was not a default option. Today, by default, if you create it, if you don't specify anything, it will be encrypted with the TD. However, that encryption is done with Microsoft managed keys. So what happens, for example, with that data if it's exported outside Azure? So if I want to do my backup and want to export it, what's going to happen? It's going to be unencrypted. So it kind of breaks this principle of encrypting data everywhere, both in Move and in REST. We want data for applications to be encrypted at all times. So if we encrypt it with the Microsoft managed keys, first of all, any kind of export of data that we do, it's not going to be encrypted anymore. Simple ways, like if I'm exporting it outside the Azure. So if I want to download that backup of that database to my local machine, right? I want to do something, I want to restore it locally, whatever. If it's encrypted with Microsoft managed keys, I cannot decrypt it anymore, right? Because I don't have the keys. So if it's still decrypted, it breaks the purpose. So it's going to come out unencrypted, right? Already decrypted from the Azure. The second part is many organizations and many industry standards are questioning if we should trust this Microsoft to encrypt data with their keys, because that means if Microsoft owns the keys, they are able to decrypt the keys as well, right? They are able to decrypt the data. So it is recommended to use our own encryption methods. We use Azure Key Vault. We have encryption keys inside our Key Vault, and then use those keys for encrypting the data. First of all, exported data will no longer be unencrypted because we now own the key. We can use the key to decrypt it. And the second part is also now we own the keys. If we want to go a step further, there are also hardware modules with a Key Vault that can take this step even further, and the encryption is double, and no one can actually access our keys in any way. Okay, number 8, Microsoft Defender for Cloud. One of my favorite services, and I wrote. John mentioned that I wrote the book together with Tom, who is he's he's a program manager for Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So very cool service, and the purpose of this service in Azure is to provide you with your security posture. So what Microsoft Defender for Cloud does is it takes your current situation. So what is the state of your resources, and how does it compare to the best practices and recommendations? And then it provides you with certain security score and with recommendations how to improve it. So if I go, I don't know, if I deploy the storage account and that storage account is publicly available, so it's accessible over the internet, and then it's unencrypted, and I don't know, let's say that those two are enough. Microsoft Defender for Cloud will flag that storage account. It will bring my secure score down. It will say, yeah, your secure score sucks. You need to improve. And it will also provide. It would also provide me with a recommendation what I need to do. So if I went to the recommendation, it will list my storage account and say, okay, first of all, you need to kind of create some kind of network controls for your storage account. You should not be exposing it to everyone over the internet. And the second part is you need to encrypt that storage account as soon as possible. So Microsoft Defender for Cloud is for giving you some kind of security baseline. So it compares all your resources to what's recommended from Microsoft, and then provides you with the list of things that you need to improve. So very cool and very useful to do. We can also track regulatory compliance. So if we are aiming as an organization to reach certain compliance standards. So if we are looking into ISO 27001 or PCI DSS or whatever, there are several dozens of those industry standards. We can track down how our current situation compares to any of those standards. And now, when we are speaking with Microsoft Defender for Cloud, I cannot exclude but mention a thing that is kind of a natural extension of Microsoft Defender, and that's Azure policies. So how does Microsoft, or how does Microsoft Defender for Cloud provide you with those recommendations and the list of resources that are not compliant and extra? It's basically using Azure policies. Those are Azure policies in audit mode. So they are telling, okay, this is the best practice. You're not doing the best practice. I'm just auditing here and listing you with the resources that are not compliant with what we are recommending through this Azure policy. What you can also do with those Azure policies is, especially like in the beginning, audit is fine. It's just telling you what needs to be improved. But let's say I created a storage account. Microsoft Defender for Cloud told me, yeah, it's not compliant. You should fix that. I go there, I fix it, and now it's good. Like my secure score goes up. Everything is nice. I'm compliant to the standard, blah, blah, blah. But tomorrow, one of my colleagues comes along and deploys a new storage account and does the same thing all over again. Now, secure score drops again. It shows up as a new recommendation to fix this storage account, how to prevent it. But Azure policies, as I said, are coming. When we look at from the Microsoft Defender for Cloud, they are coming in the audit mode, but we can also put them in different modes, like deny, for example. So if I put a policy that's tracking down if my storage account is encrypted and if my storage account is exposed to all is exposed to internet, then I can switch it to deny effect and say, don't allow deployment of such service. So in that way, we are enforcing that future deployments are going to be compliant. So definitely something to look into, and policies are a very cool way of keeping track of our environments and keeping them highly secure. Next one, Azure Sentinel or Microsoft Sentinel. It changed since then, but I've been many times asked what is the difference between Microsoft Defender for Cloud and Sentinel, because both are security tools, and then people are having a hard time to distinguish one from another. So Microsoft Sentinel is a SIEM solution. So it basically ingests a lot of logs, a lot of events in a single place, and then tries to provide you a way to query what's going on in your environments. It's a cloud solution, so it's totally cloud native, but allows you to ingest information from basically anywhere. You can ingest data from on-prem, you can ingest data from other clouds as well. The sky is the limit. Like whatever you want to do, you can get it. It uses logs analytic workspace to ingest data. Once the data is stored, you can use Azure Sentinel to analyze the data. So how you can do it? You can do it in many different ways. You can create your own queries, and then you can do a manual threat hunting, searching through the logs, what's going to happen. Very recommended to actually create some kind of dashboards that you can track down what's going on in your environment, how to it's easier to detect anomalies. But the best part of all of this is it also leverages machine learning, right? In the background, it analyzes data for you and then it has ability to with the machine learning to detect certain incidents, certain events that we could not detect ourselves, or even connect events that on first glance look completely unrelated, but because Microsoft has this database, historical database, that tells them that if these four events happen in sequence, the fifth one is coming. So something that we could probably never see for ourselves, it helps us uh, uh, definitely understand better what's going on in our environment, and we can detect any kind of incident, security incident, and different alerts almost in real time, and try to stop bad actors from doing certain damage in our environments before it actually happens. Many times I often discuss the security aspects and what happens when someone is in your environment. So if we look at the traditional environments, it takes up to 9 months to detect that bad actor is inside your network. So 9 months is a lot of time. They can do a lot of bad things in your environment in the 9 months. They can steal a lot of data, manipulate that data to their advantage. They can destroy some services for you, create you a complete downtime, etc. It can be bad. On the other side, that amount of time that bad actors spend in your cloud environment is decreasing, because we have all these cool tools, right? We have very interesting ways to protect ourselves today. We have behavioral analytics, machine learning on your side. We can analyze huge sets of data in near real time and detect things that are happening across our environments. It doesn't really matter which cloud, is it on-prem. We can interconnect everything. Everything is meshed together, and we can detect attacks on our organization across different vectors, across different services, across different environments, etc. But even with all of this, we come down to the last point of this talk, and I believe the most important one is, and it's train, train, train. Try to train people all the time. We need to keep learning and understanding what's going on in our client environment at all times. This is the most important thing that we need to remember, to keep progressing, keep learning, and spread that knowledge across our organization. Because when we look at it, like as I said, we have all these nice new tools, different firewalls, behavioral analytics, machine learning, and then we have a user, which remains to be a weakest link. So we need to train users, but also as IT professionals, we also need to keep training and learning all the time. One thing that is constant is in cloud is a change. So cloud is changing all the time. I've been using Microsoft Azure from its very, very, very beginning. So from before it became globally available. And when we look at how Microsoft, it wasn't even Microsoft Azure in the day, right? It was first Red Dog, but it went globally available with the name Windows Azure. Then we got Microsoft Azure in the end. But so the names even changed, but and how it looked, it was completely different. It was very few services, very limited, and now we have this entire stack of security services available to us, right? We have all these like Microsoft Defender, Sentinel, Azure policies, different security tools, right? That Azure Firewall, for example, Web Application Firewall, those are the security services. And then every every service on itself by itself has also some kind of security feature enabled. Like I mentioned, Azure SQL database or storage account. I mentioned them several times. So you have option to limit the access to those services over firewall, or we can encrypt those services, or use our own keys to encrypt those services. Or when we look at the web application, like for app service, like we can control what version of the TLS, we can enforce HTTPS that is used on our application, we can use our certificates to encrypt the data, etc. Excuse me. So both from our side, so us as IT professionals, we need to keep track of what's going in our environment and what are the new stuff, new things that are available for us, right? Because a lot of these services are coming along. They are constantly progressing. They are getting new functionalities. New services are released. We need to keep track of that. So what is the new service? Can I use it? Does it provide me an edge when it comes to my security? And the second part is we need to train our users to know what to do when something goes bad and how to react. Phishing emails are going to come all the time. There's no way to protect ourselves, but teaching our users how to react when they have a phishing email is a key way to move forward. Okay, I don't know if you have any questions. I will keep waiting for questions, but anyway, thank you for your time. I hope that you found the session interesting, that it was informative, and I'm still waiting if there's any questions.
Yeah, we do have a question that came right now. And thank you. Well, first, I want to say thank you so much, Mustafa, for the great tips. I literally wrote down the tips that you have in one
Thank
to
you.
10. Yes, that's right. But we do have a question actually, for from Nikos. Yes, Nikos asks, which tool should I use to check what is open in my VNet?
Okay, so what is open? So the VNet itself should tell you what is open. Like if you go to network security rules, you should see what is open on the individual subnets of your VNet. By default, if you don't have a network security group, everything is open, right? It's everything is like you should have on each of the subnets, you should have network security group assigned that will limit access to certain ports that you should say they should access. If you just put it out, if you just create a virtual network and the subnet without any protection, everything is open. So you need to be very careful on how there's no direct tool that maybe network watcher can tell you different things, but you would not see what is open, but you can check if it's open, let's say like that.
Okay, thank you.
Uh,
We have, yeah, go
there's
ahead. Yeah,
there's
go ahead.
another question here, also from Nikos. He says, another question: am I safe enough with an app proxy or a relay?
Depends on how you set it up. It can be a way to be protected. It really depends. It can be a very good way to protect yourself. A proxy, really, that's essentially the same thing. But it's also very important to understand your entire architecture and how you communicate. It's very important that even if you have a proxy, it should still be encrypted. The trust, how the communication identification works between the two sides, it's still something we need to take care of.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Nico said, thank you for the answer. I do
So,
actually, we don't have any other question from the audience that I see so far. Do you have any questions, Håkan, before I shoot in mine? I have a few thoughts right now.
Yeah, yes, because I really like this. It was very
Mhm.
comprehensive
Yeah,
presentation, Mustafa.
very
But
good.
what would you say if you would just recommend one thing? What would you recommend then?
if I had to say one thing out of these 10, what one thing that we should do? Start with the MFA, definitely. For
Hmm.
everything, any online account that you have, enable MFA on it.
Yes. I have a follow-up question before we take Nika's other question. So I use actually MFA, so I have the authenticator up and I do have the FIDO key.
Okay.
And one of the things that I wonder, that I'm curious about, maybe you can answer this. What if you lose your phone? I mean, you have this authenticator up. Is there a way to back up uh, your your authentication details on the phone? Just
You
like having a
should.
break glass account in Azure, for example.
Yeah.
Does it
So
work?
basically, what you should do. So as an admin, there are ways you can handle it, right?
Yeah.
As an admin, there are ways. Like you mentioned, bro. Break glass account can happen, that can restart, but as a user you might end up in a difficult situation. Like
Mm,
as a regular user, what happens if I use my account? Yeah, you can probably reach out to your admins, and they will be able to reset your authentication, requesting you to register again on the next sign in. But I also recommend having additional way to verify, right?
mm.
Besides your mobile app, it is good to have something additional. Like you mentioned, you also have a FIDO key,
Feeder.
right?
Yeah,
So you
that's right.
can switch between those two. My authenticator app you can be your default one, and you can have a FIDO as a backup. So
Mm,
if your authenticator you lose your phone, whatever, you can go in with your FIDO key and then disable the second authentication method, and register a new phone or whatever you need to do.
yeah, that's right.
So you always use two methods at least.
Yeah.
That's my recommendation.
And SMS also. I think call or an SMS, the
It could
MFA,
be. I,
yes.
I I mentioned that out of the mobile options, app is the most secure, right? But you
Mm,
can have different methods. Like with the phone, you can have SMS or a phone call, but you can have additional email registered as well, right? Where you can receive a code on your personal email, different from your work account or whatever. So it's also something you can do. So there are different methods you can set
yeah.
it up.
All right. Thank you. All right. Let's show another question from Nikos.
Okay.
Yeah. I have an on premises machine located in the intranet via an app proxy. I connect to an app service and then to API management. Is it safe enough?
I cannot say with 100% certainty because before looking into entire configuration and the setup, but it sounds fine. Like the workflow you mentioned here, intranet, app proxy, application app in the process, that sounds fine. Like it sounds fine as a process. It's question if it's configured properly, but it it should work in theory.
Mhm. Thank you for that. A comment from Stefan about my question, that we can back up also with the
And
Microsoft
that's
account.
the point, right? If you don't have a backup for your MFA, then you might get in a problem. It has an ability to back up. However, there is like it. How many of you try to restore it? Restore the backup. So here
Yes.
let's put it like I have my Authenticator app has a huge list of accounts for different clients for whatever. So
Mm,
first I use it for everything, for my personal things. So my all my personal accounts are in there, and then I have my work account, and I have accounts for different customers as well in there, and the list is huge. So let's say for my work account, I have a backup, I restore it. All good, sounds fine. Like I see all the accounts, I restore the backup, and I can see my work account in the list. However, there's a question mark next to it, and it asks me to go to my account details for my work account and verify the method, which I cannot do because I need way to get in. I need additional way to get to my account. So it's kind of like it's a cool thing, but doesn't work all the time.
yes, that's a good input from you. I That's a good one. Yes, thank you also, Stefan, for sharing your input there. Yes, I think we don't have any more questions so far. And we are in the last minute. So, any more further questions, we can take on our 15, 20 minutes after session fika with everyone. So please join us. Mustafa will be there and spare his free time with us this weekend to answer more questions related to Azure security. And I
But did
believe,
we show
yeah.
the link here?
Ah, yes, I do actually have the link prepared.
Ah.
Let me just send it on the chat. It was me that was organizing this one. So the link is shown there. Let me just go to my bit.ly link to share it with you. So in the chat, that is the link to our Zoom meeting if you want to join us and mingle a bit before we finalize our session later. Yes. Anything else? By the way, Mustafa, how can our friends and community reach out to you or connect with you if they want to follow your work?
There's Twitter handle right there in my name, or LinkedIn, whatever you
Yes.
prefer.
Yes. And I also recommend the book. I love the books about security. I'm actually preparing myself to get certified as Azure security engineer. So the AZ 500 is also a good associate certification to take if you want to be better in Azure security. And I truly believe as a developer, we really need to start from the code and not wait until it's in production in terms of that. Yes, Håkan, any
Mm.
final words before we switch?
No, just wish everyone a happy weekend and a relaxing weekend here, and hope to
Yes.
see you next time.
Yeah, at the Fika session as well
Mm.
after
Yes.
this. All right. So thank you everyone and thank you Mustafa. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.